Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. As a follow-up from my last episode where I spoke about the stages of team development, so that was forming, storming, norming, and performing, I'm now digging in a bit deeper to particularly in that storming phase, but it really happens throughout, but a concept that is going to help you get out of that storming phase by equipping your team members, equipping yourself, and practicing this art of mining for conflict. I use a lot of Patrick Lencioni things, if you can't tell. In following his 5 dysfunctions of a team, one of the key things is this fear of conflict. So it actually stems from a lack of trust, because if you don't trust somebody enough to speak your mind because you're fearing retaliation, then this conflict, a lot of things get just brushed over because it's like, we can't say that to this person because they're going to blow up. Or if I correct that behavior, then they won't work on the project I need them to work on. So, showing up 5 minutes late to a meeting, we can deal with that because they're doing this. That kind of stuff is where we're avoiding conflict. That is what gets us into trouble, because now we're allowing behavior that is below our standard and we're expecting behaviors that are above our standard. So we can't do that as leaders. And particularly when we're talking about team development, your role as a leader is to equip your team to be able to handle situations, to be able to handle conflict, to be able to have productive, sometimes heated discussions to come up with the best solution to the problem and get it implemented. So that's going to include holding each other accountable, as well as accomplishing tasks on time, but also digging in deep, arguing, and getting everybody to fully agree. We have lived in this world where we have a lot of consensus, where we're like, consensus is good because at least we all agree enough to, move forward. But what I find is that people will say, okay, yep, I'll just go with it. It's fine. That's not really what they mean by consensus, but consensus ends up getting us that watered down idea because, well, rather than everybody being convinced that this is the right idea, we're all making compromises in order to get to an idea that we can support. So I think the idea of when we rolled out this concept of coming to a consensus, what we did is we wanted everyone to agree, but we don't always mine out all of the conflict that needs to happen to really and truly agree. And when we can really and truly agree, this is when we get awesome buy-in from everybody, which means people are doing the things that they said they would do. They're helping each other when they're not able to do it, when they need help, and they're truly driving for it. Because I want you to think about a time when you had an activity or you had a goal that you just weren't that bought into. So you had to do it. So you did what you had to do, and you got by. And if it wasn't perfect, you're like, it's fine, it's done, and it's off my plate. And then I want you to think of a time when you were so invested, you were so bought into this goal. You were like, yes, this is the thing that has to get done right now. We're doing this thing. It's going to be so great. And I can see all the benefits of getting it done, or I really want it, whatever that is. When we have that kind of buy-in, we really work. We put the extra time in. We don't mind saying, I just want to finish one more thing. And we don't mind, coming back to it later or just doing a little bit extra. We want to. We're thinking about it in the shower, or we're talking about it over lunch because we're excited about it, not because we're complaining about it. So there's good sidebars and bad sidebars, I think. So this is what we need to be able to do, because when we can have healthy conflict that is, yes, sometimes heated, then we can have amazing results, amazing solutions, and amazing, very satisfied customers, which means more profit, more revenue, more business. Yay, that's good for everybody. All right, so let's get into it. So definitely conflict gets a bad rap because we think that this conflict thing is a battle. I remember when I was leading and I had a lot of, we'll say, dysfunction on my team. And I was not equipped at that time to deal with it. So I knew I needed to let them fight because they needed to get it out. But I didn't know how far to let them fight. So they would be getting crazy heated sometimes. And eventually I'd just say, okay, it's enough. And I'd cut it off. And then we weren't really solving it properly. And, then I would get feedback from HR, like it got too much or it's going too far. But looking back at it now, I could have refereed better, right? So this is where we get into the role of the leader in this conflict. So again, we're in the context of teams, and these teams go through this forming where they're getting to know each other, and then they start getting into that storming where they're starting to struggle or starting to disagree because it's not all happy, fluffy agreeing. You're getting into the nitty gritty of the work that you're doing. And now differing opinions will come because we are humans and we have different opinions. So they will come and we want them to come. This is why we want diversity of opinions and thoughts on our teams, because we need a different perspective to get to the best solution. So this is what we're looking for. What we're looking for is to bring that conflict out, but in a healthy way. So I've talked about this several times on this podcast, but the conflict continuum. So this is basically, if we think of conflict and we don't think of it as just a thing, it's not just a point, it has a spectrum involved in it. So the spectrum can go from being, very just like, okay, we disagree, but I don't want to say anything because, oh, it's great, it's wonderful. Yes, of course we agree. Or it can go all the way to, we hate this person and we're going to be nasty. Like think junior high, right? There are adults that still do that. So we don't want to be at either end of that spectrum, because when we're at the one end, we only get one person's idea, and we might as well all just not be in the decision-making meeting or process at all, because we're just going with one person's idea. We're not actually pulling out the best ideas of everyone and doing that thing. We certainly obviously don't want to be on the other nasty end of it where we're deliberately sabotaging others, because clearly that's not good teamworking. So what we want to be is somewhere in the middle. And if we say, because we know we're going to spill outside, we want to be a little bit left of center. So this is the conflict area that we want to be in. And it is your job as the leader to make sure your team and yourself that we're all functioning there. So how do we do that? First, we want to look for what conflict's going to look like. So obviously, the easy one is I have an idea and I don't like that idea. Okay, that's an easy one. We have a differing of opinion, and okay, let's talk about it. What do we need? What are you, person A, what are your thoughts here? You stated yours. Okay, person B, what are your thoughts? How would you change it? What would the modification be? And going back and forth and getting the other input of the team to, okay, now we have the thing that we want to do. Okay, so that's the easy one when it's very obvious because people are speaking out. That's what we want. Okay, but most of the time, particularly if you've had a leader that is do as I say, so like you might be a new leader over a team who's do as I say, or there's just been a general, everybody is so nice and we get along so well, our team is so great, but did you see what that person was doing over there? So this is the conflict that comes out, and it's there, but we just want to ignore it because, well, if it's not rocking the boat, why would I mess with it? The thing is, it might not feel like it's rocking the boat right now, but it is rocking the boat. Because when we have these sidebar conversations that are either judging the idea or the plan, or changing it outside of the meeting, or talking about just talking about someone in kind of that gossipy sort of talk about way. When we have those kind of conversations happening, we are tearing the team apart, because now what we said in the meeting doesn't have the same meaning. We're not bought into it. So, it doesn't have the same meaning or the same weight, which means we're not bought into it, which means it's not going to be as successful, and everyone's just going to do as much as they have to do versus exceeding the expectations. which is what we want. So we're going to look for that. We're going to look for sidebar meetings. So you might hear it after the meeting. You might say, okay, so you might walk by and hear people talking about it, right? You stop and you say, I hear you discussing, rehashing what we did in the meeting. We came to a conclusion, right? What I'm hearing is you're not bought into it. So it sounds like we need to go back to the meeting. That can feel hard because you may have spent hours hanging out in that meeting room and coming up with the decision. But if people didn't actually agree, then you didn't actually make the decision. And you can't possibly move forward because there are still questions, there's still disagreement happening. So that's one way to look for it. Another way to look for it, and this is maybe less obvious, but when everybody just agrees right away. So just too quick of agreeing. That typically will mean that they're used to just having to agree. It's not worth the argument. So somebody's not listening, that sort of thing. So if you're coming into a team and they've been operating like this, you're going to have a lot of mining to do because it's going to feel very difficult, probably because there's a big lack of trust. So it's going to feel very difficult to try to mine all of that out. So it would be worthwhile at that point to go back and start building some trust. I have done a podcast on trust. I can't remember how much detail I got into the building techniques of it, but that trust, it's doing what you say you're going to do, but it's also getting to know one another. And a huge, really amazing way to do it is doing a Working Genius workshop, because I've started adding some wonderful things that they're developing in there where we talk about what's crushing and craving, as well as like what our drawbacks are with each genius. So that is a great way to mine out some conflict that's not really conflict. It's conflict that's more misunderstanding of, just how I operate. Or maybe a change or a modification that we need to make that helps. So I will potentially do another podcast on how to trust build, because that is a huge part. So if we're not saying anything and everybody's just like agreeing right away, then we want to start building trust first and continue in meetings and in conversations, pull out what the real questions are. So asking lots of questions, putting the detective hat on, that sort of thing is very helpful. Another one is, again, more obvious when you get the maybe sarcastic, but maybe no, it's fine. It's fine. Yep, it's fine. We'll just agree to disagree. So that little passive aggressive sort of talk, it's not fine. When people say it's fine, it's not fine. So pull it out. Say, okay, well, I'm not hearing fine from your body language or your vocal intonation. So let's talk. What's the issue? We're here to talk. What don't you like? What's not working for you? And sometimes they might not be able to name it. Because if you have someone with, say, the genius of discernment, they can just say, I don't know what's not right. And so I was afraid to say something because I don't know what's not right. It just doesn't feel right. And that takes a lot of trust to say, okay, it doesn't feel right. Good, let's go. Let's talk about it. Anyone else? Where are we at? What doesn't feel right? And inevitably someone else will say something, because there is a courage level that has to be in there and in that trust, right? This is trust building as well. When you can learn and you can slowly grow your courage to say, I don't know what's not right, but something isn't. And then it'll give other people the courage to then add to that. And then you can probably figure out what's not right and get to an even better solution that everybody is supporting, instead of just going, it's fine because it's not fine. Next, if someone is not speaking at all. Now, this one's a bit touchy because sometimes there are a lot of people, 50% of the people really, that are wired where they need to process more before speaking. So what they'll do is they want to take in the information, and then they want to go away to somewhere that is quiet to think through it before they start bringing up ideas and saying things. So if you have people that are being quiet, which you likely do, you may need to set up a process of, here's the information, process it, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. This is very helpful for even the people that like to speak quickly. I am the one who likes to speak quickly, and I need time for processing. I don't always realize it because I really like to speak quickly. So I get really excited. But then what I find myself doing is I go back, I start thinking through how it's going to actually work, and then I start to have more questions. So it is a very helpful process for everybody if you're trying to come to some kind of a decision, particularly maybe a strategic decision, or even like a problem solving, like, hey, we've got this new product, or we've got this problem that has a chronic quality issue that we need to really come up with the right solution for. So there's a lot of instances when this will happen, and it's very helpful to somehow either have two meetings. This is where we're going to present some ideas, then we're going to go away and we're going to come back and discuss it again after we've had time to think it through. Or you could send like a video out, like you can make Loom videos really quickly, record something, and then send it out and say, this is what we're going to talk about in this meeting. So I'm going to prep everybody just via talking instead of a long dragged out email. And, I want you to think through it, think through what the drawbacks are, think through what the benefits are, think through, like, poke holes in it. That's what we need. So you could send that out in advance, and then everybody can come prepared to the meeting, having already processed. So that's another way to kind of get around that. But essentially, that sort of two-phased discussion, decision is extremely helpful, even for the quick talkers. The lack of talkers might help you identify it, but it can be a big, huge benefit for everybody. Next, somebody who's not listening at all. So I think we've all been in meetings there where somebody is just talk, and they will jump in over everybody. So this could be a very huge, huge problem. And we need to watch it. So it could be a couple of things. It could be, number one, that this person doesn't actually want to listen to anyone, which would be, I would say, a fit problem. Most likely, if you're listening to this podcast, I'd say that person probably isn't going to fit well in your organization. Or it could be a confidence problem. I know it sounds crazy to say that somebody talking over everybody is a confidence problem, but think back to, I know when I was first a leader, I was so scared because I was young. I'm quite short, so I felt intimidated a lot. Female in a very male-dominated world, I felt like I had to prove myself and know the answers. And I've, working with many clients, working with a lot of new leaders, they're like, I have this feeling that I need to prove myself, or I have to know the answers because they look to me to know the answers. So there are a lot of people who feel like when they're in a leadership position or they want a leadership position, that the way to do that is to talk over everybody and say, yes, I have the answer for you. As they start to say the answer, they're going to jump in and say the answer for them, which doesn't work. That can be coached out. That can be fixed. The other one maybe can be, depending on what the root cause of it is, but that confidence problem is something that should be coached out because they might be very capable people. They're just going to alienate a lot of team members if they're talking over them all the time. I want to touch on one more thing. I want to go back one because I forgot to mention it. So in the case of people not speaking at all, so you do have those people that need to process, but you also might have somebody who has something to say and doesn't want to say it. So it kind of goes back to the first thing there. So it is good and it is okay for you as a leader, if somebody is not speaking, for you to say, I'd like to hear what you have to say. What are you thinking? And you need to create an environment and maybe give permission to say, it's okay if you say that you're just thinking, but I do want to hear your thoughts, because we do want to hear their thoughts. That's why they're there. So we need them to speak, and it's okay that they might need processing time. So we have to give that to them, but we do want to hear their thoughts, because there are people that might, that will sit quietly because they've been taught through series of being led that way, that to say something could be dangerous. It could be impeding to their future career, right, in some way. So they want to keep their mouths shut. So again, that's that trust building. So what do you do? I've kind of gone through quite of what you do, but as a leader, if you're in a meeting with a conflict, the biggest solution is, as I mentioned early on, let them argue. However, we want to get some boundaries on the arguing. So we want to keep in mind the conflict continuum, right? And when we start to get too far to the nasty side, someone's calling someone a name, someone's making a blanket statement of, you will always do this, or starting to bring in old arguments, that's when you as the leader, aka referee in this, need to step in and say, okay, let's hold up. We're getting a bit heated. Let's take a breath. Is it true that they always do this? Like, start to get them back to truth. So we want to bring it down a little bit and get them back to truth. Okay, you have been saying this. You have been saying this. Let's start again. Let's get this name calling out of here, right? So you can call it out You can say, when they make blanket statements, you can bring them back to truth, because no one is always one way or always another way. People are usually a very big blend of ways. So you've got to bring them back to truth. Okay, so here's where we are, or we're going to stick to this argument. If that one is still bothering you, then we have another problem going on. However, we're sticking to this argument. We are on this one right now. You can bring them back to the argument at hand. Another great thing to be doing in this is you're really facilitating, but you're actually helping them to paraphrase and helping them to kind of hear what they said. So if everybody's very heated, you can bring them down and say, okay, person A, this is what I've heard you say, blah, 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 blah. So you can do that. And then person B, this is what I've heard you say, blah, 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 blah. Or, which is even better, you can say, person A, I would like you to give me a quick synopsis of what you've heard from person B. Once they do that, then you say, okay, person B, was that accurate of what you were trying to say? Now you're trying to get them, bring them back to kind of identify these gaps. So then you go the other way as well. So what we want to do, and really what most conflict is, it's actually misunderstanding of something. So sometimes people will say something and then they mean something else, or they say something and someone else takes it the wrong way. Because again, we're all coming at things from different perspectives. So when we can start to hear how the other person heard it, we can then clarify. We know what to clarify versus just keeping saying the same thing over and over again. So what's great to do as a leader is to have them paraphrase, but then also start to ask questions. Okay, help me understand how is it working that way in your mind? You know what I mean? Like just getting them to try to see the other's perspective. When we argue, when we have conflict, a great mindset to be in is not that I'm trying to convince you of my idea, but I'm trying to understand the other person's idea. I'm trying to understand your idea, not convince you of mine. When we can both argue from that perspective, the conflict gets less heated, but also gets resolved better, because now I can understand what this person is saying and they can understand what I'm saying. And we can really clarify the difference and see maybe we're actually on the same page, or maybe we're not that far off, or maybe we are very separate and we can understand and appreciate where that person is coming from. So that's how we're going to do it if we're in a meeting. A couple of things that I want you to be mindful of. You can stop the meeting. You can say, this has been very heated. I'm going to ask everyone else to go. We will resume the meeting at a later date. We're going to finish this. You can stop the meeting. That's fine. Second thing, you can take a break. If emotions are hugely high and everybody is like, including yourself, and I'm going to say especially yourself, if your emotions are extremely high, you're best to take a break. And I'd say take a break anywhere from 5 minutes. Like just go walk outside for a few minutes and we're going to come back to all the way to the next day, but I would not go any longer than that. If we start going any longer than a day, now we're ignoring it and sweeping under the rug. And it's going to lose its momentum. It's going to lose its importance. So if you do it, set a time, say, let's take 15 minutes, go get something to eat, go get some water or grab a coffee. I'm not a proponent of smoking, but go grab a smoke if that's what you do, right? Like those are the things that you have them, like just go do the thing that's going to relax you, bring you down, and then we can talk again. Okay, make sure you do that for yourself too, because I don't know about you, when you watch two people argue, sometimes you get involved too, especially when it's your team. So it's okay to take a break, and then you go back to number one, you let them argue again and let them continue to argue. So I've kind of talked about when you're in a meeting and people are arguing around you. So I do recommend, if it's not super duper heated, but solving it with everybody there, because there is a level of everybody heard it. Somebody else was probably having a similar question. Now we sorted things out, or we brought in help to be able to do it. If it has gotten super nasty, or we know there's a chronic relationship issue, that's when you pause the meeting, you send them out, and then you do the thing. Like you do this facilitated thing. If somebody's coming to you in, say, a one-on-one and complaining about someone else, this is again conflict. So what I would recommend you do here, and what most experts would recommend you do here, is just pause. Say, okay, I'm going to have you pause. It sounds like you have an issue with this other person. Maybe dig in first. So I'd say dig in first and say, okay, what is it about that that's bothering you? And start to dig in if it's what you want to find out there is it a real problem or is it their perception of a problem? So getting them to kind of understand, okay, what is it that's bothering them? And then you need to invite the other person in, because this conversation actually needs to happen between the two of them. It should not be doing this triangle thing to you. If that is making that relationship worse and worse and worse. So what you need to do is you need to bring them together, because essentially you need to teach them how to argue together. You need to teach them how to see it from another person's perspective and how to get along. It's like siblings. So if we're coming to mommy all the time or daddy all the time, there is a problem, and you need to bring them together and have a facilitated discussion. Ideally, you can do it right then. You bring that other person in. Say, so-and-so, say person A, say your thing, person B, thoughts on that. And they have that discussion together. And then we clear that air. Times you might need a bit more preparation, because maybe it's been a long time happening. It's very deep seated. So sometimes it's great to have 2 one-on-one. So one with person A, one with person B. Get them prepared with proper language of how to state their thoughts. Get them to be introspective, to make sure that, a lot of times we have things that make us feel certain ways that maybe aren't accurate. So it's the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, results wheel thing occurring one more time, that there are thoughts that are driving us to feel a certain way. So make sure it's real again, but get them prepared with some proper language. So I've talked the language of how we give feedback, but basically, especially if it's a conflict sort of situation, we want to say something that we've agreed to. So we're kind of restating the expectation or what we've agreed to already, what we've observed, and then you ask questions. Okay, you say, now you tell me what you think. So it's the same thing in peer-to-peer. It can also be, when you do this, I feel this. So these I feel statements make it sometimes feel safer in a peer-to-peer sort of situation. So you give them that language and you help them and you coach them in advance. And then they come together and they do their conversation. And now as the leader, you're the observer, you're the neutral referee still, and you still want to be mining for more conflict there, because sometimes people are going to be afraid to say something. They're going to still want to hold back because now they've got this kind of rehearsed sort of thing. So you want to say, can you tell them how you feel? Can you explain what you said to me? So dig a little bit. So it's a little bit like poking the bear, but in a respectful sort of way, because you want them to have the argument. You want a little bit of heat to go on, or not necessarily prodding, heat and yelling, but you want them to speak the truth. Sometimes the truth gets a little more heated. Sometimes the truth, it doesn't feel kind, but not speaking the truth and not having these arguments out and continuing to let these things fester beneath the surface are degrading your foundation of your company. It's degrading the foundation of the relationships, and it's degrading your ability to grow and your ability to be successful. So these things are hugely, hugely important. And when we just take it even to a personal level, if we continue to allow people to behave in a way that isn't working for most everybody, let's say somebody is not working well with everyone, we are doing them a disservice. They could be hugely successful if they could get over this one hump. So when we ignore issues or we skirt over problems, we're doing that person a disservice. Kind to be truthful, it just doesn't always feel good. All right. So the key here is we need to give our team members the ability to argue well. And the best way to do that, argue well, is to get them to practice arguing using these proper principles. So the first time, if you're just getting started with this, it's going to feel hard, and you're going to have to be present for it a lot. You're going to be doing a lot of that refereeing and, pulling out, getting them to speak to one another. The more you do that, I'm going to say you probably, if your team is a pretty capable team, probably do it maybe, depends on two, 3 times, right? With the same people maybe. And then you can start to prepare them in advance to go do it on their own, because they know what you're going to ask. They know these things. It's like, I need to say how I feel about this. I need to say how, they're going to already know those questions if you've been good at pulling out the information with them. So don't be afraid to step back once they've done it a few times, because your goal of doing this is to get them to do it well on their own. And then they're going to have to teach their team eventually someday as well, likely. So you want them to be able to teach it to someone else too. So this is how we grow. This is how we have succession plans. This is how we grow very capable leaders. And in all reality, when people learn these skills at work, they're capable of taking them at home too. So this actually improves the home life directly in that way, but also indirectly, because when you're not dealing with some underlying conflict all day long at work and work just works, you can come home and you can be fully present because you're not steaming over something that's been happening all day long every day. So 2 ways you're improving home life that way as well. So the key is get them to practice arguing a lot, because you're going to be mining for conflict, but you're giving them the proper skills and the proper tools so they're practicing it properly. So practicing arguing badly with bad skills and bad form is going to give us bad arguments. So give them the skills, mine for that conflict, and you're going to see huge improvement in your team working, and more importantly, your results, because they're going to be working together much better. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, share it with a friend, comment on the YouTube, leave a review, because that is how we get the word out to others. And if you would like help and support as the leader, as you're trying to take your team through this conflict mining, then reach out to me. Hop on my website. You can reach out to me from there. So it's just KristinaSchmitt.ca. And I would love to support you and your team on your journey to success. All right. I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.